join with other UUs in the tradition of striking the gong 3 times. Once in memory of those congregants who have gone before us, one in honor of those of us who are here today, and one for the future. Welcome all of you. Your announcements are in the order of service. I looked those over and I want to make an announcement for myself. I'm going to be teaching a little class on Wednesday here, and the class is not me talking, it's me practicing with you, those of you who want to come, good posture, breathing, and some little exercises that we might do to make our life easier. So that's on Wednesday at 2 o'clock. The other announcements are in your order of service. Welcome to this place. This is a place where you can be yourself, but not by yourself. However you describe yourself or name the holy, you are welcome here. We especially welcome those who are visiting for the first time and those who recently are returning to us. We are glad to see you here. Please stay after the service for coffee and tea and conversation. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, the Reverend Stephen Landale, and he's speaking today on Gandhian nonviolence, a way of life. So now's the time we have our fish collection. We collect your contributions of food or money in support of our local fish pantry. This is a combined effort of several Roseburg churches, and it has been our social action in Roseburg. We do this with compassion for those who are hungry, ill, or without shelter. And we thank you for your gifts. I think I don't have this the right way. I'm going to have to stand on my tiptoes, maybe. I feel like... Do you want the mic down? Yes, because I feel like I'm talking underwater. That's how I feel. My assistant here is taking care of me. There, I think that's better. Okay. We thank you for your gifts. I forgot to mention our appreciation to our greeters and our media technician back there, Jake Tranter. And I also need to welcome our streaming audience who are watching from home. Our opening words today are from Eknath Easwaran. Long ago, before he led the nonviolent liberation of India from the British colonial rule, Gandhi led mass nonviolent resistance in South Africa. In a meeting with a government leader, General John Smuts, Gandhi delivered the message that would sum up his life. I quote now from Gandhi, the man, an excellent introduction by Eknath Easwaran. Gandhi quietly said, "I've come to tell you that I'm going to fight against your government." Smuts must have thought he was hearing things. "You mean you have come here to tell me that?" He laughs. "Is there anything more you want to say?" "Yes," says Gandhi, "I'm going to win." Smuts is astonished. Well, he says at last, and how are you going to do that? Gandhi smiles. With your help. And with Gandhi's persistence, that is exactly what happened. So now we will have our chalice lighting. This morning we gathered to remind ourselves how to win with the help of those we perceive to be our enemies. This morning we gather, as we always do, to grow in faith as individuals and as a community. Come, let us worship. So please join me as you're able, singing number 168, One More Step.
One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us and everyone. We'll take one more step. One more word, we will say one more word, till every word is heard by everyone. We'll say one more word. One more prayer, we will say one more prayer, till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer. One more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Now is a time in our service to share our joys and concerns with candle lighting, silent or spoken words. So please, if you're wanting to light a candle today, would you stand and come in the line to my right? We are supported by the voluntary generosity of all those who join with us. Your support is what fuels this community and its mission. What is given now is received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. For the gifts we have received, we truly are grateful. And now we'll sing From You I Receive. And hopefully I'm not leading it.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this.
It is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Reverend Stephen Landale. Reverend Landale has been a hospice chaplain for 11 years, previously serving as a UU parish minister for the same amount of time. As a Unitarian Universalist and as a progressive Christian, nonviolence has been central to his understanding of spiritual living. He lives in Eugene. He enjoys hiking, bicycling, simple things with his family. He recently finished binge watching Ted Lasso with his wife. So, our Reverend Stephen Landale.
I think it's a certain career and maybe life stage milestone when you feel like you can just share what you binge watched as part of your professional credentials and not really care what people think. It's good to be with you all. I'm going to offer a meditation that's a little longer than usual, but have no fear, my sermon will be a little briefer. And I think experiential practices are really how we change ultimately. This is by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's something I continue to practice periodically. Thich Nhat Hanh, by the way, was a Vietnamese Buddhist who passed in recent years, living and teaching out of France. So I invite you, if you're comfortable, you might want to uncross your arms and legs. Don't have to worry about having a formal posture, but helps to be somewhat aligned. Good posture facilitates breathing. And this meditation, I invite you to align your breathing. I will say some words out loud. You can say them in your mind yourself. Breathing in, it will start it this way. May I be, and then a word, and we'll go through a few different words. And then we'll be shifting it to may you be thinking of someone. I'll direct you to when that comes. People breathe at different pacings, so I don't have the illusion of I'll do it at the same time, but I'll get you started and then we'll have some time alone. So beginning first, you might want to close your eyes, or as Joanna Macy, a teacher, instructed me, keep them softly open, so you're kind of taking in the world, but maybe focusing on one thing, not being distracted by peripherals. And breathing in, may I be, and breathing out, calm. Breathing in, may I be, breathing out, healthy. May I be fearless. May I be peace. So it's calm, healthy, fearless, peace. I'll say those words and you can use them with your own breathing. May I be calm. May I be healthy. May I be fearless. May I be peace. And just do that for a minute and truly invite those qualities into your presence now. May I be calm, may I be healthy, may I be fearless, may I be peace. Now I invite you to bring to mind someone you care for, someone you find it easy to feel compassion or love, maybe someone you're concerned about. Bring that person to mind, and now wish them those same qualities with that breathing. May you be calm. May you be healthy. May you be fearless. May you be peace. Stick with that a little longer. If someone else comes to mind, living or dead, you may do so. May you be calm. May you be healthy. May you be fearless. May you be peace. Now, when you are ready, I invite you to shift your focus to someone for whom you do not find it easy to be compassionate. Someone, if in your liberal heart of hearts you might say was your enemy, or you felt very negative feelings towards, someone you wish would just go away or change or something, and genuinely wish for them the same qualities. May you be calm. May you be healthy. May you be fearless. May you be peace. May you be calm. May you be healthy. May you be fearless. May you be peace. And as you begin to bring your attention back to the room, I invite you to notice how you are feeling in your body as you wished peace, in particular for someone who, when you brought them to mind at other times, may have tensed your body. How do you feel in your body, wishing health and fearlessness and peace and calm for that person or those people? Just notice it. Thank you. So for some of you, that may be the sermon you needed today, and I will not be the least bit offended if you remember nothing from what we talk about with Gandhi today. Those little moments of practice can be gifts. And that practice is something we can do 2 minutes in a car. I love a lot about Thich Nhat Hanh's practices. They're designed to be integrated into our life in little ways. So as a hospice chaplain, I'll do this before and after visits sometimes. Really good to do. So if that one worked a little and you think there's something better, try to find it. Find what works for you. And then when that stops working, try something else. I want to thank who picked out the footprints for the order of service today, by the way. Thank you. That was me. No, I picked it from 3 choices. But did you, who found the photograph? I didn't find this photograph. It's Jennifer. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, Genevieve, sorry. Couldn't hear. Thank you for finding this. This art depicts Gandhi's final footsteps on January 30th, 1948, moments before his assassination. And his assassination was at the hands of a man who had attempted to kill him twice earlier, and everybody knew it. But he was released. Why? Because of Gandhi's policy of not pressing charges. So full stop there. Gandhi knew this could very well happen again, and it did. And he believed in nonviolence, his way of practicing nonviolence so deeply that he didn't want to do something as coercive as press charges and maybe put someone in jail. This morning I offer a brief introduction into the teachings of Gandhi, upon which many contemporary forms of nonviolence seem to be based, or influenced at the least. I'd like to first note that there are many variations of nonviolence, most influencing others. The nonviolence of Jesus in the Gospels, of Gandhi, of Reverend Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, which drew upon very explicitly both of those strands. And there's NVC, Nonviolent Communication, pioneered by Marshall Rosenberg, which has been taught in some UU congregations, very helpful. And when I created this list, though, I noticed that all the names belong to men, though I suspect when it comes to the numbers of people who practice nonviolence most consistently, I'm pretty darn certain we'd find more people who identify as female, that we all can make progress in this area. Gandhi studied nonviolence in his own religion, Hinduism in particular, and he also found it in the writings of Leo Tolstoy, who learned nonviolence in large part from, and you may want to hold on to your seats for this, an American Universalist named Adin Ballou. It's one of those surprising things. Kind of went from Adin Ballou reading the Gospels and kind of seeing that through the lens of nonviolence, writing about it, went over to Russia, to Tolstoy, and then to Gandhi. However, before Gandhi learned nonviolence from any book, he learned it from a personal relationship with a woman, and I'll get to that towards the end of the sermon. From these sources, Gandhi formed his own philosophy of nonviolent resistance called ahimsa, believing that the long-term effect of violence is always more violence, eventually, if not immediately. Gandhi sought alternative means for oppressed people to better their condition. He sought ways of confronting an oppressor, not with violence and hate, but with truth and love, and effectively. Coercive measures such as imprisonment, he likely saw as grounded in violence or the threat of violence rather than the persuasive power of love. Ahimsa became his greatest tool. It is not passivity. It is not resistance for the sake of resistance. It does not seek necessarily to defeat an enemy, although the words earlier said, "I will win." It seeks transformation in the face of truth. As American pacifist A.J. Muste wrote of truth-telling, it is a revolutionary thing to do. We don't do it in personal relations. Lies and evasions, not bombs and bullets, are killing those whose blood now drenches the earth. End quote. Telling the truth calmly and without judgment, and also I would say with some degree of compassion, is a crucial part of ahimsa. Deception and fear are the parents of violence. Truth and faith are the parents of nonviolence. It is difficult to sustain anger against someone who is calm and unafraid of truth, not defensive. This stance requires courage, not just the absence of violent tendencies. Gandhi emphasized the importance of taking care of one's adversary. In South Africa, as Gandhi was planning an Indian march against the government, there was called a great strike of the European employees of the railways. Gandhi was asked to time the march to coincide with the strike to make it more effective, really shut down the government, and he refused. His aim was not to harass the government, but to make a specific point unrelated to the strike. He timed the march to minimize damage to the government in this case, demonstrating the purity of the movement's cause, and in the words of Timothy Flinders, the firmness with which it adheres to truth and nonviolence, from Miss Swearen's book. Now, I will add, at all the other times, it called for different tactics, but he saw that this way of approaching would be most persuasive, and it was. With this restraint, Gandhi showed consideration for his adversaries. It helped him say, in essence, we are not here to hurt you. We are here to open your eyes to the truth. Part of the truth is this: your actions are hurting us. We ask you to stop. I offer now Gandhi's words, again taken from Miss Swearen's book. I have altered his language for gender neutrality. Gandhi said, nonviolent non-cooperation must have its root in love. Its object should not be to punish the opponent or to inflict injury upon them. Even while non-cooperating with them, we must make them feel that in us they have a friend, and we should try to reach their heart by rendering them humanitarian service whenever possible. One of General Smut's secretaries said jocularly to me, I do not like your people, and I do not care to assist them at all. But what am I to do? You help us in our days of need. How can we lay hands upon you? I often wish you took to violence like the English strikers, and then we would know at once how to dispose of you. But you will not injure even the enemy. You desire victory by self-imposed limits of courtesy and chivalry, and that is what reduces us to sheer helplessness. Quote. In a class on nonviolence I led during my first settled ministry in Rhode Island, one person found this part of ahimsa remarkable. "I've never seen this," she said. And I couldn't think of any prominent political examples of one party offering aid and comfort to an adversary. Maybe you have. We can talk about that later. But then it occurred to me, parents do this. Grounding a teenager for misbehavior, then cooking their favorite dinner. Or another example, refusing to allow an intoxicated friend to drive, but leaving the party early to take them home, missing out on something yourself. Refusing to facilitate harmful behavior, but making sure the other party knows you care. So specific and temporary non-cooperation as part of a lasting and holistic relationship of cooperation. In our personal lives, we may be engaging in nonviolent non-cooperation without even realizing it as such. We do so naturally when the root is love. So that's good news. Learning nonviolence may be a matter of seeing where we're already practicing it or others are and expanding it. I've been noticing that more contemporary sources to which I've been turning for guidance in conversations and relationships, often in workplace settings, seem to be rooted in principles very similar to Gandhi's. For instance, I highly recommend this book that I left behind in my bag there, I was going to hold up, Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When the Stakes Are High. Consider this quotation. When facing a crucial conversation, most of us unconsciously make a fool's choice. We think we have to choose between telling the truth and keeping a friend, or not making our boss mad at us. Skilled communicators resist this false trade-off and look for ways to do both. They look for a way to be both 100% honest and 100% respectful at the same time. It turns out it's hard, but it's almost always possible with skilled steps and study and practice. The book makes some important points about being 100% honest, for instance. First, before we open our mouth, we have to be 100% honest with ourselves about what's at stake, what's the most important element of the problem we want to address. Like, don't just want to lay 20 different topics in someone's lap. And what kind of relationships we want with those involved. What's the outcome we want? That feels like a win-win. That's addressed in part 1 of this book, which is called, I love it, What to Do Before You Open Your Mouth. It's very practical. It turns out we really need to ace the what to do before we open our mouth part of the process before we succeed at later sections called How to Open Your Mouth and How to Finish. From the psychological standpoint of the authors of this book, the internal work involves careful observation of our own feelings and reactions on the matter, and, very importantly, the stories we're telling ourselves about the situation, almost automatically, unconsciously, especially with regard to how others are treating us and why. Turns out, surprise, surprise, that almost everyone in a heated, significant conflict knows they are right and the other is wrong, and usually that they are being victimized in some way by the other's selfish behavior, although there are variations on this theme. So let's take a step back. If everybody feels that way, what's the odds that anybody is right? That they're completely right and the other person's completely wrong, and they understand why the person's doing it, etc. So the internal skills taught by this book involve noticing our feelings and our stories about the situation. Second, reminding ourselves that we can never see the whole truth and rarely most of it. And thus, third, seeking to broaden our lens of what could be happening. Psychologically, this book makes a really important point that when we're our emotions are hijacking us, when we're getting in that fight, flight, freeze mode, that actually asking ourselves questions to evaluate basically activates our executive functions of our brain. It puts on the brakes. So it's almost like regardless of what answers we come up with, we've gotten 3/4 of the way there by getting out of the reactionary part of ourselves and just up to our brain that can evaluate things more objectively. And like remind ourselves, like, have I ever been 100% right when I found out the facts of the other situation? Has somebody ever misunderstood me or my motives? I mean, it's just, and humor helps with this too. So, what the book is really trying to get us to a place is to be curious about the other and not be judgmental. And by the way, if you watch Ted Lasso, there's a great scene with darts about curiosity. So it's a great show. If you can put up with a lot of swearing, it's a very good show. The opposite of curiosity, according to the artificial intelligence at work in the search engine used by my laptop, the opposite is indifference. However, it seems to me that in conflictual situations, the more prevalent and pertinent opposites are things like certainty, rigidity, judgment. Okay? When we're in a place of judgment and knowing we're right, we are like 0% curious about the other person, right? So we have to let go of that. And it's a cycle. The more curious become, the less judgmental we are. The more we can tone down the judgmentalness and certainty with humor and questions like that, the more curious we naturally become. As a hospice chaplain, serving people across political and cultural spectrums for 11 years, I have come to notice my own knee-jerk assumptions and judgments about others. And to see these tendencies, I would say, in many, if not most of my friends who would describe themselves as liberal and open-minded. Right? Doing things like driving my red Prius with a Biden bumper sticker into a small town. The person sees it, the son of the patient, as soon as I walk in the door, puts a MAGA hat on my head, and I wound up loving these people. So it's just really, its experience has changed me in a lot of ways. But curiosity can be difficult to access when we are full of justified anger, and also when it's convenient for us to see situations in black and white terms. And I will say, speaking to an audience that's largely liberal, I feel like one thing I can say for conservatives is they're very comfortable in saying, I believe in a black and white version of the world and for judgment. The tricky thing is liberals often say, oh, no, everything needs to be open. But in my observation, any group of people can fall into black and white thinking and I'm right and they're wrong. It's just conservatives are more honest about it. It's food for thought. Okay. So curiosity can be difficult to access when we're full of justified anger. Love can be difficult to access, or even a measure of fairness and perspective. However, if we can shift from our feelings to our executive brain, remind ourselves that we are in a situation or in a person is never the whole truth, what we see, we can shift gears to curiosity. And once we're in curiosity, it opens doors. It opens doors to empathy, a felt sense of connection, our shoulders coming down, humility, understanding, love. It's wonderful. So while the book Crucial Conversations does not make its case with spiritual language, it does offer examples how people can experience this dramatic softening in their stance when their perspectives are expanded by the experiences, backgrounds, and tensions of others. I don't know if there are any moments in life more truly spiritual that I've experienced than when my ego-fueled righteousness and anger suddenly gives way to empathy. For me, it's like time stopping. Has any of you ever experienced this? It's a great feeling, and it's in the Gospels, it's in lots of spiritual writings. Oh, wow, okay. It's interesting. Our egos don't want that, but we do. Like, it feels good to shed all that stuff and just realize how wrong we were about something. Living nonviolence, or being a satyagrahi, means extending the practice consciously to all of our relationships. It means rooting ourselves in the truth of our connection, not the truth of our beliefs. It means being curious about the other and caring for their well-being. In nonviolence, the means and the ends are one. When your adversaries sense that you are an honorable opponent, we'll say, to a large extent you have ceased to be their enemy. You may then cooperate to find a mutually agreeable solution. In true nonviolence, as Timothy Flinders writes, both parties emerge as partners in the solution. Only the conflict, enmity, and distrust is purged. Or as Thomas Merton said, war is the enemy, not our opponent in the war. For Gandhi, truth is all. Truth is probably the closest thing he has for God. Satyagraha, the force or way of life behind the means of ahimsa, nonviolence, may be translated as truth force or soul force. More literally, it is translated insisting on truth or firmly adhering to truth. Now, when I first heard definitions of satyagraha with words like insisting, I was surprised in a little way, as you may be, a little wary. Most people who believe, it seems to me, on insisting on truth or God aren't exactly known for their flexibility or remembering, as my mom used to say, that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. But it's different for Gandhi because in this way of life, truth is never fully known and nobody owns it. So to adhere, to insist on that which can never be fully known, is to be open to its presence in any moment freshly revealed. So it's kind of a stubborn insistence on not being stubborn. Insistent. The person who lives satyagraha approaches conflict with the desire not only to help the other come into contact with more of the truth, but to experience it more of it him or herself. We approach conflicts because we want to grow ourselves. So rather than insisting on some philosophy or theology or viewpoint being right, we insist on adhering ourselves to a way of being that keeps us constantly curious about others' predicaments, histories, and views, and constantly learning what boneheads we are because we keep judging people. We have to kind of, after a while, like that, like I did, the guy with the MAGA hat. Gandhi knew that satyagraha and ahimsa live first and foremost in one's closest relations because that is where he learned it. Forced to marry at the age of 13, hard stop, my daughter turns 13 in March, Gandhi was, not surprisingly, an immature husband, even domineering. His wife, Kasturba, taught him nonviolence and soul force in her relations with him. She refused to cooperate sometimes, but always looked after his needs. She found ways to yield without surrendering. She maintained her dignity and reminded him of his. She refused to make him an enemy, but sought ways of gently showing him the truth of his actions. She eventually converted him to this way of living. One of many unspoken heroes. Throughout his adult life, Gandhi reinforced his dedication to truth through spiritual practice, rising long before the sun to read the Bhagavad Gita. He simplified his life as material goods muddy one's vision of truth. He experimented with diet and took care of his body. And he lived in an intentional community where the needs of children and goats held equal attention from Gandhi, one of the most famous people in the world, as the political concerns for which he was known. Political leaders would come to see him, and he's like, got to take care of the goats first. It wasn't power tripping. It's just that's how he lived. And speaking of which, learning as we go. As I was preparing the sermon, actually even on the way down here, I realized there's an area that I have some firm beliefs about and going to be a little more flexible about today. And that's the talking after the sermon part. I've sometimes experienced this to be something that interrupts what I hold to be the kind of liturgical flow of the service, the feeling, and I've also experienced it sometimes. In my experience, people sometimes use it to hear themselves talk for a while, and you can have great feelings, the energy goes away. It's totally random. But I thought, man, I'm pretty stuck on that. So, and obviously it's doing something for you all. So after this sermon, we'll have, we'll talk a little, have immediately, and we're not going to, anybody's going to worry about right or wrong. We're just going to do it and do it as best we can. And then we'll have our hymn and go on as you do. So, Gandhi was not proclaiming truth. This is very important. He was experimenting with it. He kept an open mind, learning how truth might manifest in the current situation. He wrote, "I have nothing new to teach the world. Truth and nonviolence are as old as the hills. All I have done is to try experiments in both on as vast a scale as I could. In doing so, I have sometimes erred and learnt by my errors. Life and its problems have thus become to me so many experiments in the practice of truth and nonviolence." End quote. What a great way we can do it. Maybe not on the vastest scale as he does, but in our individual lives. So may we as individuals and as a congregation and as a larger liberal religious body of Unitarian Universalists and all those trying to follow these values and individually or in groups, may we all dedicate ourselves to be honest, fearless, and compassionate, conduct these experiments with truth and nonviolence. May we take stands in the truth as we know it, while being receptive to the Holy Scripture of the moment, particularly from the experiences of those we have falsely believed to be our enemy. Amen. So brief silence, and if you feel moved to ask a question or to say a little about what this evoked, because it might be of benefit to others, may do so. I guess we'll pass around this. Is this it? Okay, there you go. Kathy will pass around the mic. Thank you, Kathy.
As I listened, I felt what your words were asking of me. And I realized that I very much want to be able to do these things. So I'm going to take this picture of the footsteps home and put it somewhere where I'll see it many times a day. Because he did this teaching by walking that path and by doing it, which proves it can be done. And what I do realize is it seems to suggest an imbalance because there's no punishment paying off, nothing to equalize it, because that equality is not important and it's not real anyway. But that's in my feelings of how does this balance out so that I can walk that path. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Hi, Stephen. When you were talking about the groups that have adapted and lived their lives or led all of our experiences in nonviolence, I'd like to add a current day one to that. So I think a lot of people could relate to nonviolence in another way. In 1969, Stonewall erupted in the Village, and in 5 cities, Los Angeles, where I was, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, and a smaller one. in 1970 there were non-violent gay marches for the first time. And the discussions that went on between those cities was all about making sure we had Quakers, we had other people who had marched with Martin Luther King, and those of us who had studied nonviolence. And we made sure that the philosophy was nonviolence. And if you look back over all those years since 1970, I'm sure you'll recall maybe marches that hit 20,000 marchers and maybe another 20,000 in the crowd. And even today in Roseburg, we have a non-violent march for gay pride. So I think we have a very real group of people that are practicing, and that you can see a difference in the behaviors of that group.
There are evil people in this world. Some of them are leaders of entire countries. I understand what you're saying. It seems to me that the formula you're providing for us requires time to work through it and some degree of trust. But there are certainly circumstances where I don't think there's either one. And I'm curious how you would propose to handle situations like it's December 7th, 1941, and bombs are dropping, or it's in the Middle East, Hamas has just raided settlements and slaughtered, I think it's not too strong a word, over 1,000 people. How would you propose reacting to these situations?
Well, I guess, thank you for asking that. It's a very good question. And first thing I would say, I don't think it ever hurts to be open to the perspective of another. I also would question, it can be useful, I mean, I guess some circumstances say it's evil, but somebody's evil and hard to argue in some cases. But through my hospice work, I guess one way that's expanded me is not just, everybody thinks it has to do with death and dying. I'm also privileged to be welcomed into the lives of people in a very intimate way. And that includes some people who have sexually abused others, and people who, in a smaller, not head of state kind of way, would be very easy to be categorized as evil by some others. So that experience has led me to question the usefulness of labeling evil in any circumstance. I find that the tendency, that's one thing. With regard to methods, I'll come back to that. Martin Luther King, who practiced a lot of this, said that he could understand resorting to violence in some circumstances, something that people make Malcolm X to be the big militant, and King was a complete pacifist. Not exactly true. What King said was, in our context of democracy and the press and so forth, nonviolence had the potential to be persuasive, and not necessarily to persuade the people who were doing the evil acts, which undoubtedly was happening, but to persuade, as almost always, there's lots of bystanders, to pressure those who were taking those steps into stepping down or changing the laws. So that's something to understand about King, that there's not the kind of naivety, and I don't know as much about Gandhi, frankly, but I suspect that he would have a better answer for you than I would, and he was fully aware of evil. So I think that whenever we, and I will say this very heated subject right now, the Middle East and what's happening with what happened to Israelis and what happened to innocent Israelis, what's happened to innocent Palestinians. What I've noticed in this conversation on this topic is I almost never hear anybody who can describe with equal detail and horror the massacres, the unfair deaths that have been inflicted on both sides. So, for instance, and anybody who really, it's rare that somebody wants to, if they're really upset with Israel for horrible bombing of Palestinians, is really willing to watch the videos of what Hamas did and consider Israel is a country the size of Lane County, and this attack was premeditated, and children were raped, and the rapists were laughing, and the goal was to kill as many people as possible, as violently as possible, and in many cases have as much enjoyment while doing it. So talk about evil. There's a lot of evil there. And on the other side, people who are saying, well, Israel just has to defend itself, which perspective I understand too. It's like if a state exists to defend itself, that was without a doubt an assault. To treat Palestinians as completely expendable, and to kill so many in response. It's a horrible situation. It's a cycle of violence. And to focus, to not, even wherever you fall on it, seeing one side as more to blame, our tendency to mainly blame one side inevitably leads us to see some things more than others, because it makes us feel strong and good and right. And I'm saying, if there's anything to get from this today, be willing to sit in the horrors of it without being right. Because whenever we think we're really right, we're not looking at certain sides of it. We're not looking at the massacres of October 7th. We're not really understanding what it's like to live in either of these places. So, yeah.
Gandhi's view on tyrants changed over the years, but he spoke many times about how to deal with tyrants, and especially with Adolf Hitler. And the thing that courage is the key, and it's in a well-advanced personal condition.
It is, and back to what both of you are saying here too, a lot of what we heard, what I shared with you, Gandhi's methods worked in South Africa because the people in charge had some respect for, graciousness and being a gentleman and chivalry and things like this. You know what I mean? There was a potential to be influenced by those things. And some people do not have that potential. And when there's a full-out assault, if persuasion's not an option, is there a place for war? Personally, I feel like I'm proud of our veterans who served in World War II. I think we had to fight back. But even then, the U.S. did some horrible things in World War. Not just before the big bombs. We targeted the poorest neighborhoods in Tokyo for bombing because they would burn. And Dresden, we targeted civilian. People forget this, what we did too. So it's very complicated, but I feel like even when people decide to go to war, there can be some measure of regret, restraint, care exercised in it. So we who sit in judgment of Israel, which, the attack on October 7th was it's kind of hard for anybody here to imagine it. There's a reason there's no political left in Israel anymore. You have to look at that and say, why has the political left died there? Ask yourself that and look at it. There's been a lot of things happening, the bus bombings and other things there, peace talks, terrorist attacks during the peace talks and so forth. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, is there really no good 30% of the people in Israel anymore or something? No. It's horrifying what they've gone through. But even if you could say military reprisal is necessary, if we can still in that moment say, there's pieces of this I don't understand, nobody should ever be killed, and do it with more care. But we judge Israel for doing this, but what do we do? I mean, in World War II, we probably could have exercised some more restraint there too. And people do not know this. How many people didn't know that prior to the nuclear bombings in Japan, that we were targeting civilian neighborhoods for fires? Like, I mean, new information. How many people didn't know about Dresden bombings, fire bombings of Dresden and things like this? So I'm just saying, and I didn't know all this stuff more, and there's more. So the United States too did these things. So it doesn't mean it's right for Israel, but I'm just saying it's easy to get indignant about what someone else is doing and not see there's a human tendency to, when you fight back, to go all the way and make sure you leave no chance that they can get you again, which is what Israel's trying to do. And ironically, making the odds much greater because there's all these people who half their family have been killed who are now going to sign up for Hamas. Anyway, it's very difficult. Sorry, we're going kind of over here. But I can come back, but is there anybody else who hasn't spoken yet?
Just one quick
and
one.
anybody to speak on the personal aspects too, yeah.
One quick, please forgive me here, but relative to crucial conversations, that's
Yeah.
where I'm going. You talked of HIMSA telling the truth, and it demands a certain strength. I've been in difficult conversations that were escalating. And in several situations, I backed away because had I continued, things would have either gotten out of hand or gotten physical. And I said to myself, well, you know, I shouldn't go there. Let me ask this question, and I'm willing to make myself look badly. Okay. Was that because I didn't have the strength? You mentioned here that with HIMSA telling the truth demands strength. Now, was it because, and if I was lacking the strength, how do I acquire it going forward?
Well, first I'd like to say, as you were saying, may look myself bad here asking this question. I was here thinking, I'm going to look bad trying to answer it because this is a really hard one, so very difficult that we find ourselves in. I don't think there's any easy answer. There's a lot of, because if you have a philosophy that truth reveals itself in the moment, out of the context of it, it's hard. I will say this, that when I'm in a conflict, first thing I have to do is notice my own energy on my own self. And there are absolutely times where the best thing I can do is back off because I'm so triggered that, or even partially triggered, that what I'm going to add is just going to make it worse. So I feel like that's wisdom. I mean, that's the serenity prayer there. That's saying something's beyond my control. You know, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, to have the courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. So courage and strength are not to be uniformly applied in moving forward. Sometimes we have to have the equal wisdom to accept this situation's not going forward here. Because of me and or them or the dynamic, we need a breather here maybe. So that's wisdom. That takes courage to, great point. It takes great courage because it's so easy to interpret backing off, being strong and then backing off. How often have any of us said ourselves to well, I just let them, walk all over me. I just let them do it. I'm not just going to take it up the you-know-what, right? I'm going to stand. If I back off, I'm just letting them get their way. I can't do that. So I ask you, which part of yourself is saying that? Your ego or your deepest spiritual self? But it is tricky because sometimes bullies get their way by intimidating us. So sometimes it's just hard to discern. When is it the bully's intimidating me and I need to stand calmly and speak up and have the courage to keep going? And when is it this is either a situation which there's no way forward or I'm just not capable of it right moment, so I'm going to take a break. So there's no easy answer there. So yeah.
I think courage and safety should be considered always together.
Yes.
Because I may take a step back because the situation doesn't feel safe to me. And unsafe could be emotionally unsafe.
Yeah.
It could be in a
Well, and you may have just named the reason why at the beginning of the sermon I said, isn't it interesting all these names are male? Because it's not safe for women to speak up in many situations like that. It's not as acceptable, not as easily effective because of external factors, have nothing to do with the person. So yes, safety is very important, and you know, we're playing for the long game in our own lives and in others, so discretion's a better part of valor sometimes. So when is discretion part of valor, and when is discretion a wimp's way of letting a bully get their way? I don't know. You have to discern moment to moment. Yeah. Yeah, real quick. Yeah, because others.
All of my life, I've had so many heterosexual women over time ask me why gay men are so different.
Why gay men are
Why gay men are so different than heterosexual men.
Yeah.
And on the large scale, I would say because most of them have lived their lives accepting nonviolence and everything that entails. And if you have the kind of inner workings that have brought you to that point where you can step up in a lot of situations and not be violent, you're also going to be empathic, you're going to be easy to talk to, and you're going to have a lot of non-gay friends.
Okay. So you think the path to empathy might be a little more well-trod for gay men than straight men, because straight men have the blessing and curse of just getting to do what they want. Something like that. Is that, you know, right? You may not be forced into being empathetic by, yeah. Yeah, and anybody else who hasn't spoken, and then gentleman back there, yeah.
I'm backtracking a little bit.
Yeah.
Pride is self-righteousness. The act of self-righteousness is doing evil to accomplish a goal. And that's what Gandhi was talking about.
Say that again. Doing evil to accomplish a goal is. Say that again.
Self-righteousness.
Yeah.
Self-righteousness is our ego.
Is our ego not evil? Sorry, my hearing's
Well,
not
it is
great.
evil.
Yeah.
Yes, it is evil.
Yeah.
But a part of our self-righteousness, the act of self-righteousness, is doing evil to accomplish a goal.
Yeah. It can be. And, you know, I have to say I've become more and more hesitant on the word evil, even though sometimes, gosh, I used to say, no, you can call it. I'm just going to openly share it. Like when I started, Unitarian Universalists never name evil and never say sin. I used to struggle with that, and I feel like we need to acknowledge that parts of it. But then there's also a part where it's like, you know, by naming something evil or completely wrong, it actually improves the odds sometimes of evil acts being done, because you become justified. And yeah, yeah,
Do things, say what Russia's doing to Ukraine.
yeah.
It's a selfish act. It's a greedy act. It's a self-righteous.
Well, I guess here's where it can be advantageous, and I hear you, and I'm not like, you know, whatever. God didn't appoint me to be the expert on stuff. I'm just up here talking. But where I find it useful to think of it in more neutral terms is even with Russia invading Ukraine, if I set aside evil, selfish, horrible, all those things, even though they are, I mean, it's very fair to say that, and just say what's going on here, I might see a leader who's trying to stay in charge and is acting out of fear. Pride, and also just the only way I'm going to stay in power is by showing strength, by invading. And so anyway, but if you're actually in a position to do something about it, it can be more useful to say, leader with pride is scared of losing power, might give you more potential to figure out something to do rather than just say it's evil. Do you hear me? It's like you're trying to understand what's really going on instead of, why do they do that? There's a big difference in this. Why do they do that? And why do they do that? It's curiosity. So I'm saying whatever stance improves the odds on curiosity of understanding the other is helpful to me. Any stance that shuts down curiosity, and I would submit that most of the time we say evil or wrong, we are shutting down curiosity, is not helpful. Unless we're in the situation, which is extremely rare, where there's like an active shooter coming in and we need to act immediately. having quick right, wrong, evil, I got to do something about it is extremely helpful. And that's why we have those evolutionary, we have evolved. We have evolved to respond to danger immediately, but I would submit that that situation is applicable a teeny tiny amount of the time for most of us. For police and other people regularly in danger, maybe more often. But for most of us, pausing to be curious is helpful. Yeah, but not. We aren't evolutionary rigged for that. We aren't, you know. Anyway, but we've gone way over, I think. So sorry about that. But anyway, maybe that's why I want to avoid this talk, because I know speakers can talk so damn much, because I just did. So should we still sing? You leaders, shall we sing and close as usual? Okay. Yeah. And I forgot to sing a song, the meditation of the sermon, so that was probably a good thing. We will go make channels for the streams of love.
Make channels for the streams of love, where they may broadly run, and love has overflowing streams to fill them everyone. But if at any time we seize such channels to provide, the very founts of love for us will soon be parched and dried. For we must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love.
How about if people, as you're comfortable, hold hands or touch elbows or get a little closer to other people. I know in this age of concern about illness, nobody should feel pressure to do anything they don't want to. But at least feel like take your time. Don't all have to reach. Don't all have to. We could go this way. There we go. May we go forward from this time with a sincere desire to be genuinely curious in every situation, to be learners, especially about the things we don't want to learn about, and the people we don't want to learn from because it might make us feel less right. And may we take on some spiritual practices that help us be more disciplined in living that way, more alert. May we all sleep well and eat well and strive to bring our best selves to every situation. And may we remember most of all that we are not alone. And so may we strengthen communities like this one that help us